Today we're looking at some fascinating source material that shows how we might actually solve two of the world's absolute biggest environmental challenges. Could literally throwing shade on sun-loving plants make them grow better? Like way better? We've always been taught that crops need maximum sunlight to do their thing. But with our climate shifting, well, that old rule of thumb is getting put to the ultimate test.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll quickly cover the climate and space crunch, what AgriPV actually is, this wild Cyprus raspberry experiment, how these plants are beating the heat, the all-important taste test, and finally, what this means for the farming of the future. Let's get into it.
All right, Section 1, the climate and space crunch. We got to start with the massive macro problem we're facing globally right now.
We absolutely have to transition to renewable energy to cut emissions, right? But here's the massive catch. Solar arrays need space, a lot of it. And that creates this immediate head-on collision with our agricultural lands, the very same lands that are getting absolutely battered by extreme heat waves. So we desperately need clean energy, and we obviously need secure food sources, but they're basically fighting over the exact same real estate. Every acre for solar is an acre lost for farming.
And to put that space crunch into perspective, hitting our global climate targets means we'd need to convert over 12,000 square kilometers of land to solar arrays. That is an area roughly the size of the entire state of Connecticut. If we just bulldoze farms to build solar plants, we completely jeopardize global food security. It's this zero-sum game, and honestly, it's one we just can't afford to play.
Which brings us to Section 2. What is AgriPV? The whole point here is getting these two competing sectors to actually cooperate.
Enter Agrivoltaics, or as it's usually called, AgriPV. This is an absolutely brilliant dual-use strategy. You generate clean energy overhead with solar panels while cultivating crops right underneath them on the exact same plot. It's literally doubling the output of every single acre involved. A real game changer.
The best way to think about this isn't that we're shoving plants into the dark. It's more like giving these heat-sensitive crops a vital layer of high-tech sunscreen. You wouldn't stand out in the scorching midday sun without some kind of shade, right? Well, it turns out delicate crops actually love having a protective parasol, especially one that happens to be generating electricity at the same time.
Moving to Section 3, the Cyprus raspberry experiment. To see if this actually works outside of just a neat theory, we're looking at a fantastic study published in the Journal of Agriculture and Food Research.
And the testing ground they chose is intense. It's Chandria village, way up in the mountains of Cyprus at an elevation of 1,250 meters. Why there? Because summer temps routinely blast past 35 degrees Celsius up there, with brutal focused solar radiation. It is arguably one of the toughest agricultural environments in Europe. The logic is simple. If you can make a delicate little berry thrive there, you can make it work almost anywhere.
So the researchers wanted bulletproof data. They planted delicate primocane red raspberries, specifically the wingy cultivar, in 3 completely different setups to test this sunscreen effect. First, just a traditional, unprotected open field. Second, a setup using a standard white protective net. And third, the whole shebang, the cutting-edge AgriPV solar panels combined with that white net.
All right, Section 4, beating the heat. Let's look at what the shade actually did to these plants.
Okay, the results here were just staggering. The raspberries grown under the AgriPV system produced 65% more fruit than the ones baking out in the open field. Let that sink in, 65% more berries, just because they had solar panels over them. The open field plants were simply too stressed out by the extreme heat to produce well, while the shaded ones absolutely thrived. But wait, it gets better. Check out this water efficiency data. Out in the open field, producing just 1 single gram of fruit took 1.76 liters of water. Under the AgriPV panels, only 1.07 liters. By cooling the soil and stopping so much evaporation, this setup saved roughly 60% more water per gram of fruit. I mean, in a water-scarce place like Cyprus, that's an absolutely massive victory.
You're probably wondering how this works biologically, right? Basically, the solar panels block the harshest rays, which lowers the leaf temperature just enough to keep the plant's photosynthetic engines running smoothly. Out in the blazing open field, the intense heat causes what's called vapor pressure deficit. The plant essentially panics, frantically shuts its pores to survive, and totally stops growing. The AgriPV shade keeps the plant happily humming along in its Goldilocks zone.
On to Section 5, the taste test. Because, let's be real, a giant harvest is completely useless if the fruit tastes terrible.
This was actually the biggest tension point of the study. If we block out the sun to get more berries, are we accidentally ruining everything that makes raspberries a superfood? Do they lose their antioxidants? Do they get super sour?
Well, the punchline here is spectacular. There were zero trade-offs. The lab tests proved the shaded berries kept all their vital antioxidants and polyphenols. They had the exact same acidity and identical aroma as the sun-baked ones. But here is the absolute kicker. The shaded berries consistently tested higher for total soluble sugars. So the AgriPV system didn't just give us way more berries, it literally gave us significantly sweeter berries.
Bringing us to our final part, Section 6, Farming of the Future. Let's look at the blueprint this gives us moving forward. The biggest takeaway from this explainer is that this is the ultimate win-win scenario. Energy and agriculture don't have to be enemies fighting over resources. When we do it smart, they actively support each other. We get the megawatt hours of clean solar power we desperately need, right alongside a massive boost in local food production. The researchers' conclusion acts as definitive proof that dual-use land can reshape farming. They've found an obvious advantage to using AgriPV in harsh environments, completely without any trade-offs in quality or flavor. It acts as this necessary buffer, shielding fragile crops from the chaotic realities of climate change. Which leaves us with a pretty exciting question to chew on. If a little bit of high-tech shade can save precious water, boost yields by 65%, and literally make raspberries sweeter on a scorching hot Mediterranean mountain, what other favorite foods could we save or even improve by bringing AgriPV to farms globally?